Okay, so we are back and we are talking about boundaries. So I want to reiterate because I just thought, because, I can say something, but there are 1,000 different scenarios. I mentioned drug use and creating boundaries. If that person who is abusing drugs and that you have in your life is your child, then of course your boundaries are going to be different. So please understand that when I give you scenarios, I want you to, of course, use wisdom for your own life. There still is going to be some boundaries that you have to create, what they call tough love, or where you're loving somebody and walking with them through a certain scenario. But there are still boundaries. And like I said, boundaries must be given out of wisdom that you learn and that you understand from the situation that you went through. Boundaries are not to be given out of fear, because then they are not boundaries. So I'm going to give you an example of that because we talked about love. So when my ex-husband and I were courting, I fell head over heels in love with him, and I immersed myself in his life and his friends and his family. And that's a wonderful thing. When you fall in love, you should do that. You get to know the person, you get to know their community, you get to know their family. And that was great because he had wonderful friends that became my friends and a wonderful family. That said, I did it to a fault. So it became a situation that we were always with his friends. On every holiday, we were always with his family. And like I said, he has wonderful friends and a wonderful family, but guess what? So do I. I have an awesome family and I have a wonderful community of friends. So what happened was the relationship became unbalanced. And because it was unbalanced, that wasn't healthy. And it didn't show any value to me or what I brought to the table, which was my great set of friends and my wonderfully beautiful family. And it created, like I said, unbalance in the relationship that wasn't healthy and that didn't value me. It wasn't equitable. It wasn't balanced. It wasn't even. And so what do I learn from that? So I can't get out of that relationship and be like, I'm never going to love again. I'm going to build this wall around my heart because no. I don't do that. I say, I learned from that. I learned my part in allowing that to happen. And I learned that that doesn't work for me. So when I get into another relationship, when I love again, that I know that if I even see that coming up, then that's a boundary for me. No. I have a wonderful set of friends, a great family, and I want someone who loves me and who immerses their self in my life, who I am, who my community is, who my family is, as I immerse myself in their life and who they are and who their community and who their family is. So then my boundary now becomes a lesson that I learned from a point of an issue in my past relationship that turned out to be something painful and sad for me. But I learned a lesson from it. And so now I create a boundary when I walk into the next relationship. I don't build a wall and create a prison around myself where I'm in prison. The person out there is not in prison. I'm in prison because I've created this wall out of fear, out of my own past pain. And I've decided not to trust anybody anymore because of what happened way back then. And I'm living in the past and not in the present. And I'm not allowing myself to fully live my life based on something that happened back then that no longer exists because it's the past. And now I'm robbing myself of the future, of trusting and learning to love again because I won't live in the present and accept the lesson, accept my part in learning of what part of me should not have allowed that scenario to happen, or what part of me did, and okay, I forgive myself and I know now, hey, that doesn't work for me. I cannot do that again because that's not working in a healthy, loving relationship. So that is the difference between a boundary and a wall, and constantly building a prison wall where you hide yourself instead of learning a lesson and allowing yourself to live in the present and experiencing all life has to offer. Okay, so let's see, what other misnomer about unforgiveness. Also, I want to say this. If you don't have anyone to forgive, okay, wonderful. Yay for you. I'm happy. No, sincerely, I am happy. If you feel like you don't have anyone to forgive. Now, we're going to go over the third revelation, as you know, for 3 weeks. So something may pop up in your spirit, which which I'm imagining will. But if you're like, no, Erin, I've forgiven everybody I need to forgive, I don't really have anyone. So then I would say to you, I would like you to focus on maybe something, a disappointment or something, or regret that you have in the past that maybe that you haven't released. So that will be what you will work on for the 3 weeks as we go through the third revelation and talk about perseverance and forgiveness. That said, I do believe that maybe, or maybe not, but most of us have something that happened in the past or the present that we can work on using this time in this revelation to work on and build our forgiveness muscle. Let's call it a muscle. But if you really think you don't have anything, I urge you to sit in rush hour traffic. By the end of that, you're going to have a lot of people and things you need to forgive. So another misnomer about forgiveness is that it is always quick. No, not true. I'll tell you, after the first year after I separated from my husband and we were going through the divorce, if you would have asked me to forgive in that first year, I would have told you to go somewhere, and not in a polite way, because I was still healing. Because sometimes you need to heal before you forgive. Actually, most times, especially if the hurt feels extensive, you need to take time to forgive. You need to take time to heal before you forgive, and allow that time to mourn what you've lost and get over and release it, and then you're able to forgive. So forgiveness doesn't always come lickety split just because you want. Like I said, it's an onion. It has layers. It takes time. Sometimes there are some things that happen that you can forgive that moment, that day, that week. Other times you need to take a moment and get some healing. Other times you forgive, but you say, hey, I have to put up some boundaries here because I'm seeing a pattern of behavior that is not healthy for me, and I can't have this person in my life in this way. So you put up boundaries. Other times you decide to forgive and that person is not owning it or whatever. So you say, hey, like I said, again, boundaries. We can't be here because you're not living in truth. And God bless you, but I can't do that with you. But I do forgive you. I'm not rehearsing what you did over and over again. I'm not wishing bad things on you. I'm not allowing what you did to stop me from moving forward. But I am placing a boundary and saying, hey, we can't do anything. Or the other scenario I gave, you forgive, the person owns it, they're sorry about it, they've apologized, you've forgiven them, but it's going to take a minute to rebuild trust. It's going to take a minute to rebuild intimacy. These are all factors of forgiveness. There is no one-fit-all plan. They're all different elements and different ways that we forgive. Forgiveness is absolutely accessible, but like I said, sometimes you have to heal first to forgive. Sometimes you have to put up boundaries. Sometimes you forgive and it takes a minute for someone to earn your trust. And sometimes you forgive, and this is another scenario, you've forgiven something and then you get a trigger and you find yourself mad at that thing all over again. And then you get mad, you're like, man, I didn't forgive at all. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes we forgive, but we forgive on a certain level. And then life, or God, I like to think it's God, shows me that, hey, you forgave on that certain layer, but now I'm letting another layer come through, and this is the layer you need to forgive on now, because he's allowed something to kind of touch me that was like, ouch, ouch, okay, I still have some forgiveness work to do on this certain thing. It doesn't mean that I didn't forgive on that level. I did. On that day, I forgave, but there were some still deeper things going under that I didn't know about and didn't see, that I need to bring to the surface now and allow to be healed or talked about or discussed, whatever that is, to bring about the other healing, the other part of that healing. So sometimes healing can be, like I said, like sometimes healing can be like an onion and have different layers that you need to peel off and figure out and assess and discuss and deal with and reckon with before you get the fullness of healing. So I want to share that same scenario regarding my dad. So I told you what happened when I was 17. There are a lot of other things that were hurtful and happened with my father when I was younger. We had, I wouldn't say a tumultuous relationship, but a very hurtful relationship when I was younger because of who he was at that time. As I got older, And when I started really walking with Christ, and that simply means that for those of you who aren't Christians, when I say really walking with Christ, it means when my faith in what Christ is and what he has for me became the center of my life and something I built my life around. Okay, so that began to happen for me in my late 20s. And so at that time, it was on my heart that I needed to, reconcile with my father in a new way and to forgive him. So what happened was I discovered, and I want you to use this too, when there's somebody you need to forgive, sometimes you need to see the bigger picture. So the bigger picture was for me when I found out that my father, when he was younger, with his father, was in a relationship who was abusive and who abandoned my father in many ways. And that began for me to open my heart and mind up to see my dad in a new way. I realized that you cannot be what you have not seen or what you have not experienced. Maybe you can, but it's very hard. So he did not grow up he grew up in fact in an abusive relationship with his father, and then in an abandonment relationship with his father. So then he went on to do those same things with me. It wasn't as abusive. He didn't do with me what his father did with him, but it was emotionally abusive in the things that he did. And so when I got to my late 20s, I began to see him as a full person. And you may have heard this sentence, but and if you haven't, it rings true. Hurt people hurt people. My father was hurt, so he hurt me. Hurt people hurt people because he wasn't healed. So he couldn't do anything with what he had learned as a boy except take that into his manhood and manifest that same behavior. So when I understood that in my maturity, I was able to forgive him in a different way. So we came together and I was able to talk to him. Now, I want to tell you this too. Sometimes we get to a place where we're going to have this talk with this person and we're going to say our piece. This hurt me. This was wrong. You shouldn't have done this. Whatever our piece is going to be, we're going to have our come to Jesus moment with this person. So my father and I had our come to Jesus moment. You may have one with somebody, and I want to prepare you now. It doesn't always happen, and most times it doesn't happen like the dream you've made up in your mind where they completely own everything they've done. They give you this elaborate, beautiful apology with tears, and you guys embrace and you move on into the sunset. No, not all the time. In fact, I didn't get that kind of apology that I wanted from my father. I didn't get that hard-earned ownership and all the bells and whistles. He did apologize to me. It wasn't in the way I had fantasized. But I let it be enough because he apologized to me and I had a willingness to move forward, because reconciliation doesn't happen with perfect people. It happens with willing people. I'll say that again. Reconciliation doesn't happen with perfect people. It happens with willing people. It's people who are willing to try. I was willing to try and my father was willing to try. So what happened is we had the conversation. We reconciled. So I got to spend the rest of my late 20s and my early 30s until I was 41 and he passed away. I got to spend those times with him in a different way. I was no longer the little girl who needed a daddy, but I was a grown woman who enjoyed having conversations with her father, and we would laugh and we would joke and we just had a good time, and I got to know him in a different way. And so when he got sick, when he got cancer and he was dying, we talked through that. I was in California, he was in the Midwest, and we talked on the phone, and it got to the point where I thought we were going to have more time with him, but he got very sick and I was called, and I knew I needed to be there. So I hadn't gone to my father's house since I was 17, because I made that vow when that thing happened that I was never going to go to his home again. Obviously, I matured past that. We had talked, we had visited, I had seen him in different times, but I had actually never been to his house since that incident. So I flew out and I was able to be with him. I was able to hold his hand, tell him that I loved him, and I believed that he was waiting for me. Because when I got there, He wasn't really conscious anymore. It happened very quickly. He wasn't conscious anymore, but I got to, like I said, the day before, I had been there for a couple of days, and I was scheduled to leave the next morning. And that night, I grabbed his hand and I, leaned into his ear and I told him how much I loved him. I told him all of the things that I was proud of him for and that I esteemed him for. And I told him that it was okay, Dad. It's okay. You can go on now. You can rest. And an hour and maybe, I don't even know if it was an hour, maybe it was an hour later he passed. But when he passed, I was holding his hand and I got to be with him as a grown woman at the age of 41. It's now 8 years ago now. I got to be with him and hold his hand and be with him before the Lord took him away. And so now when I think about my dad, of course I remember the mistakes he made, but the overwhelming feeling that I have is that I wish I had more time. I wish I had more time to be with him, to laugh with him, to learn from him. I wish I had more time. And so I urge you, if you can, forgive. To forgive. If you can, release that pain from the past. Release it. Because when that person is gone, you can't get it back. And when you learn to forgive that person, don't stay in the past about how, especially if it's a parent, about how they were supposed to be there for you, how they missed this and missed that. You will never get that time back. Build a new relationship with who you are now today and see if you guys can have any kind of relationship. So I just want to share that with you. And I want to also, I'm looking at my notes to see if there's another point of forgiveness that I wanted to share with you. Okay. I want you to also know, in terms of forgiveness, that you are going to need, when it comes to healing, you're going to need to mourn what happened to you. You have to take the time to mourn it. Like I said, maybe you're not ready to forgive. And if there's a scenario, because we haven't gotten to the forgiveness challenge yet, this week you're just reading and you're just answering journal questions. And this week is you're identifying the thing or the issue you want to forgive. And if you are just convinced that you have no one to forgive, you're identifying the issue or something that happened in the past that you need to release, right? Something may have popped up in your mind and said, oh, I need to forgive this. Maybe you haven't mourned it yet. If you haven't mourned it yet, you need to mourn it. And this is how you mourn something. I saw this really great episode of This Is Us a little while ago, where one of the characters, one of the leads, he went into a body of water and he just screamed. He allowed himself to yell out all of his pain, all of his stuff, all of it that was there. If you have something that you've been holding on to, you need to release it. Tears are medicinal. They're literally, I mean, of course they're water, they're coming out of our eyes, but they're also, what's caught up in our tears are also toxins. So we're releasing toxins from our body. Toxins are the anger, the bitterness, the hurt, the shame, whatever it is, release it. That's why women live longer than men, because we cry more and we allow ourselves to release our pain. So if there's something you need to mourn, you need to release that pain. When I was mourning my divorce, I allowed myself to cry every time I needed to cry. I'd be in a grocery store sometimes, just here, holding on to my little cart. Or if there are other things in the past, like I said, that happened. But if they come up, you have to allow yourself to cry. Some of you are parents and you're like, I got the kids, I'm doing this. When them kids go to sleep, or you go in that bathroom, you turn on that shower, you may have to lock that door and cry. Allow yourself to cry. If you're out in the car before you come in, park, allow yourself to scream. Make the time, find the time, even if you need to put a pillow and scream into that pillow so you don't upset everybody in the house, you need to get that out. So as you identify, and if you want to start mourning that thing now, begin mourning, because mourning is absolutely mourning, releasing the pain, accepting the loss is all a part of finding forgiveness and release. And okay, so I think that's it. Yes. That is it for this video. So read the third revelation, the third revelation commentary, answer those third revelation journal questions, identify what it is that may be blocking you or the thing that you need to forgive. And we are going to work on that. And I know you're like, I thought this was about perseverance and forgiveness. I will be talking to you about perseverance in your midweek inspiration. So welcome to the third revelation. It's deep, it's weighty, but we are going to get through it together. And then on the other side, be lighter and better for it.